Hey folks, Critical Thinker, June 13th, 2018. I wanted to bring you a couple of articles. They're both related. One deals with a problem and the other deals with a solution to the problem. And I think we as truth seekers have a tendency to focus too much on a problem and not enough on a viable solution. So let's just get right into it. A chilling National Center for Missing and Exploited Children report shows 88% of missing sex trafficked kids come from the foster care system. Let's just scroll down a little bit. I'll leave a link to everything I cite. In 1984, Congress established the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, and as part of Missing Children's Assistance Reauthorization Act of 2013, they receive $40 million to study and track missing and trafficked children in the United States. Now, was that a one-time distribution, or is that their annual budget? The language is a little vague. In 2017, NCMEC assisted law enforcement with over 27,000 cases of missing children, the majority who were considered endangered runaways. According to their most recent report, compiled from FBI data and their own, of the nearly 25,000 runaways reported to NCMEC in 2017, 1 in 7 were likely victims of child sex trafficking. Of those, 88% were in the care of social services when they went missing. In 2017 alone, NCMEC's Cyber Tip Line, a national mechanism for the public and electronic service providers to report instances of child sexual exploitation, received over 10 million reports. Most of these tips were related to the following: apparent child sexual abuse images, online enticement, including sextortion, child sex trafficking, child sexual molestation. In a 2013 FBI 70-city nationwide raid, 60% of the victims came from foster care or group homes. In 2014, New York authorities estimated that 85% of sex trafficking victims were previously in the child welfare system. In 2012, Connecticut police rescued 88 children from sex trafficking, 86 of whom were in the child welfare system. This goes through a couple of very specific cases. You know, shocking that Arizona, why does that state just keep coming up? Patterns, people. You have to learn to recognize patterns if you're going to investigate, or at least research. And many of you know that this is no surprise. In fact, this is probably the norm. High-level government officials have been ensnared in these foster care abuse scandals. As previously reported, multiple victims came forward and accused Seattle Mayor Ed Murray of sexually abusing them when they were children in Washington's foster care system. So that goes back all the way to 1984. As Michael Dolce pointed out earlier this year, we have set up a system to sex traffic American children. Now let's stay with that for a minute, because when I do talk to people about anything anymore, which is rare, one of the things I try to kind of make them aware of so that they just can get a basic understanding of how shit works, so it doesn't fall under the blanket, well, you're just a conspiracy theorist, is try to make them aware of mechanisms. So let's say, for instance, you wanted to depopulate humanity. What mechanisms might you utilize? Vaccines, which in several states are mandatory now for children, and I would say sometime down the line they will try to forcibly vaccinate adults. Toxic food supply, toxic water supply, toxic air. And of course, since they can't just kill us all at once, because who else is going to mine their gold? They also profit on the back end by treating the diseases that they themselves introduced. It's a really sick little system they've set up. Let's say you wanted to set up global government. What kind of mechanisms might you utilize? Well, you set up the United Nations, you set up all these think tanks, Council on Foreign Relations, etc. And you begin to slowly introduce the idea, and then you begin to slowly implement the idea. And we're almost there. You know, it's taken generations, but you almost have people clamoring for a global government. If you wanted to dumb down a population, what mechanism might you set up to ensure that? Well, you would set up a public school system. You would remove all the educators and replace them with social engineers and behavioral scientists, all of whom, by the way, are foundation-backed and certified, so to speak. And they've done a really good job. Here are some recent numbers. I will leave a link to this. In 2017, only 34% of 8th grade students in American public schools were proficient in math. The study also revealed that last year, only 36% of 8th grade students in American public schools were proficient in reading. That is nearly 2/3 of children in American public schools who cannot read or write. And that's the future, ladies and gentlemen. That is the future. This is very concerning. So if you think a movie like Idiocracy is so far outside the realm of possibility, well, then you better think again. Because, and of course, the pattern, which would be easy to establish, is that the more urban your school district, the lower in proficiency you are. That's not by mistake. It's a mechanism. Public schools are a mechanism. And within that mechanism, you set up these, for instance, Common Core, which will even further take these numbers and drop them to the point where what's going to happen? We're going to have a crisis on our hands, right? And then what's going to happen? It's the same old play in the playbook. Problem, reaction, solution. They create a problem. They're going to present a solution, and the solution is going to really be twice as bad. So let's say you wanted to set up a mechanism for the attainment of children 24/7, 365 days a year. Also protected by the state. You would set up a foster care system and a child protective service system. You would legally kidnap kids, and then you would begin to drug them. Some of these kids immediately are diagnosed falsely, and then the drugging begins. 2, 3, sometimes even 4 SSRI inhibitors, and these kids get so fucked up that they're never really the same. These mechanisms destroy lives. But it's also, if you are a predator, a great way to procure children. The most vulnerable of the children, and also the least likely to be missed. I'm not going to get into right now, that's a separate video, but the levels of predator. There's not just one type of predator. I have categorized them into 3, but that's a separate issue. So, but here's the thing, though. If you fuck with this mechanism, enter Exhibit A. The late, great Nancy Schaefer. Many of you know her. Many of you may not. I will definitely leave a link to this. I will leave a link to everything I cite. Did her fight against CPS child kidnapping cause her murder? She took one to the chest. She took one to the back. Her husband took one to the chest. They called it a murder-suicide. This was a senator. Now, she was not a senator at the time of her murder, but still, no one is off limits when it comes to messing around with what they covet the most. There's a lot of information in here. I've been down this rabbit hole before. It's a very dark place. In 2009, Alex Jones did a, whatever your thoughts are on him, whatever. Did a 4-part interview with her back in 2009. That was 2 years before she was murdered. There's also a presentation, CPS and criminality. There's also just a ton of information in here. If you'd like to research this, do so at your own peril. So, solution. You know, I think many Americans have come to the conclusion that the government is the only purveyor of solutions. Well, here are a bunch of parents who said, fuck that. We're going to start fighting back on our own. Parents form organization to fight government officials who keep kidnapping children. Over 1,200 parents have formed a coalition to fight back against the state who keeps unnecessarily kidnapping children against the best interests of the child. This is in St. Paul, Minnesota. A parents' rights organization filed a letter in federal court on Tuesday asking a federal judge strike down Minnesota's current child protection laws for being too expansive and removing children from loving and safe homes without due process. Families are being abused and in some cases destroyed as a result of laws that are inappropriate, says Dwight Mitchell, the lead plaintiff in the case and founder of the Parents Association. This is legal kidnapping, he basically states. The organization, which represents a coalition of civil rights groups, black parents, and attorneys, seeks a court order declaring that specific state laws governing circumstances under which a child can be removed from the home deprive families of due process and are unconstitutional. In fact, data provided by the state of Minnesota reveals that black families are 3 times more likely than whites to be reported to child protection and have children removed from the home. So basically, I mean, so in his lawsuit, here's why Mitchell started this. Here's his story. In his lawsuit, Mitchell alleged that Dakota County child protection workers legally kidnapped his 11-year-old son Xander for 2 years after a babysitter reported that the boy had been spanked for stealing and disobeying his parents. Well, holy shit. I mean, I was spanked, you know, and we were living in a different era, I guess, back then, right? During his separation from the family, Mitchell says was not allowed contact with Xander or to even know where his son was living. He says that since being taken by the state for 2 years, his son became more socially withdrawn and suffered lasting emotional trauma. SSRI, anyone? It was hell on earth and disproportionate to the need presented, said Mitchell, 57, a management consultant who was eventually found to be a fit parent after 2 years of being separated from his son. And so it goes on, and then this, you know, there's always the other side, and we'll present it. Minnesota Human Services Commissioner Emily Piper, in a written statement, pushed back against the growing parental rights movement and the allegation of legal kidnapping. See, a parental rights movement. That's what needs to happen. Parents need to take it upon themselves to fight. Every day, this is Emily Piper, every day, trained professionals in counties across Minnesota go to work to protect our children and families. To call their work kidnapping is an affront to the extraordinary service they perform for all of us. All of us. Yeah. Yeah. We know who all of you are. Particularly the most vulnerable children in our community. See, this is almost like reverse speech where, you know, what comes out forward. If you play this shit in reverse speech, I'd be curious as to what was really revealed. Our highest priority is keeping children safe, and Minnesota's child protection system is an integral part of that work. So, anyway, like I said, solutions. And these parents in St. Paul, Minnesota, kudos to you. Good job. Keep it up. Right now, as of the starting of this organization, which, by the way, I'm sorry, it's the Stop Child Protection Services from Legally Kidnapping. And since it began, they have over 1,200 parents. So they're doing good work there in St. Paul. Anyway, that's all I have for now. Have a good day.